when the housing markets exploded, right? The basic belief had been that owning a home, working toward and eventually owning a home, was what made the difference between being middle class and being poor. It was literally the four walls and roof of the American dream. It's how you knew you weren't poor. By the way, statistically, even if you were poor, you were sure you weren't poor because you had a house. And the house was a loan when you needed money. It was bail if you got in trouble. It was a way to send somebody to college when they needed a little help to go through school or become a lawyer or a doctor. So it was a second chance for a lot of families, and it was symbolically the sign that you made it. And most of the time, from the 1930s, when the federal government got into the housing business, before which owning homes was just for the rich, right? So then get democratized by the federal government, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the big government agencies. So between the 1930s and 2007, it was more or less reasonable most of the time that owning a house was a pretty good investment, and it was the way the average person could build wealth. So they could leave something for their kids, so they could ride out a period of unemployment, so they could pay for a high medical bill, right? Or so they could buy themselves or their children or somebody they cared about a second chance. It was a big deal. But the lesson of 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, for a lot of young people, and for a lot of people of all ages, was that it isn't such a sure thing, the house, right? And that the house can be the worst financial decision of your life. You can get stuck in there, you can lose that house, and you can have all kinds of misery, even if you don't, when your neighbor loses her house or his house, and when folks move in there who may not be ideal neighbors, would not be featured on any sitcom that you've ever seen, and who might not be the most responsible people to share the block with, right? So all kinds of problems coming up there, and just the fact that it could be the biggest destructor of wealth you ever had, right? Part of what we've seen, just so you know, is about 11 million people were foreclosed on in a 4-year period. It's kind of a lot, right? And across that period, we saw 9 million more rentals. So 9 million more Americans became renters as opposed to owners, right? So we added about 8 million units that you could rent. A lot of them were houses that people had been foreclosed out of and investors bought. And we added about 9 million people looking for those 8 million units, which isn't as bad as it sounds because there's often more than one person per unit. It's not just your house, right? But again, that's 43 million total people who are moved out of being owners into being renters. So either people who were owners and became renters, or people who statistically would have become owners, who instead either had no choice and became renters, or decided to become renters. The reason I want to pay attention to this is because their experience of being renters, anything that costs them too much money or hurts their ability to survive financially, will make it harder or impossible for them to become owners. It's a form of income redlining, right? So no one necessarily steps in front of you and tells you, no, you can't live here because of who you are, but if you can't even afford to apply, or you have no chance of being told yes, exactly which sociological folder that particular dream gone bad goes into is probably not interesting to you.